Hey, where's Aiden's Father Chris here? Welcome to our crucifictional live stream. Glad to have you with us. I just got back off a flight today from New York. I went to the city for the weekend for the ordination of a priest. So a young man was a deacon, was ordained to the priesthood. I was invited, and so I went. It was beautiful, it was glorious, until it wasn't. And what made it not? The airport. You all know what happens, right? Like, travel is horrible these days, right? I mean, you could, so like as you're going to the airport, especially in the city, meaning New York City, I was actually flew out of Newark, so I had to deal with Jersey and the tunnels and the bridges and all that stuff. Am I going to get there on time? Like, how long do I leave before? And my flight left there at 7 a.m., which meant it was 4 a.m. my body time, right? So already I'm discombobulated before I even started, and I'm going to get there on time. Do I leave too early and sit there and wait, or do I risk it and not get there? Oh, by the way, I have a rental car. I have to fill it with gas. But you don't want to get gas near the airport because you know they're smart and it's more expensive near the airport. But if you fill it up far away, will it still be full by the time you get there? And then there's that whole stress. And then all of a sudden, do you have to take a shuttle? Do you have to walk? How do you get to the airport terminals? Oh, and that's when the fun begins, because then there's TSA, right? That in and of itself is a glorious event. I mean, belts and shoes and all the junk in your pocket, and take your bottles out and pour your water and put your laptop, and then you got to wait in all those lines, and that produces stress because, oh my gosh, am I going to be late? I mean, what if the rental car took longer and you're late, and then all of a sudden you start sweating because you're going to miss your flight? Oh, and don't forget, there's the possibility of being randomly selected for a special search. I'm an Arab. Is it really random? Then, once you get through that, you get into the terminal itself, and then there's the whole thing of like eating all that crap food. And you see overweight people who are miserable eating all that stuff. And very often, if the flight not at 7 in the morning, but some days race to the bar because, bro, I need to drink me some beer before I get on that plane and lose my mind because it's already been chaos. Oh, but wait, there's more. When you get to the gate, you have to like cordon off your own area. Do you get a seat, or did you get too late and all the seats are full? And if you're there, what about your carry-on bag? Do you put it next to you, and do you want to take the seat away from the guy next to you? But if it's not in that seat, then the guy can sit next to you. And what if you don't like that guy? Oh, and of course, getting on the plane is another whole joyous event. Am I going to get my seat? Especially on those like pick your seat type of thing, like Southwest Airlines, right? And if you're not in the first group, and everybody jockeys to get in the position, right? If you're not in the first group, is your bag going to make it in the overhead compartment? And then what do you do, and how do you sit, and where do you sit, and how do you block off the seats so the funny guy you don't want to sit next to you will keep walking down to another seat? Oh, and that whole thing. Who am I going to get? Is he going to talk? I hope he's skinny. Do we share the armrest? Do I get the armrest? Do I have to be nice and give it to him? What about that guy that puts his bag behind him, and then all of a sudden as we're deplaning, we have to wait while he passes it all up? All of this kind of stuff is a horrible experience of discombobulation. And you know that I didn't even talk about the frustration and the pain of just sitting on the flight for however long, being bored all the way through anyways, right? All of this kind of stuff. As I was, coming home from this beautiful weekend, I was thinking, oh my gosh, there ain't no peace in this experience, right? And that's why I've always said, if I ever had money, I don't want to change anything about my life, but I would buy my own plane so I could avoid all of that stuff, right? That's the only luxury in life that I would ever really want, is to be able to avoid all that discombobulation. So as I was flying home thinking about it, I thought, this is the most unpeaceful experience. And we do this all the time. It's nice. I mean, I was so glad that I got to go to that ordination, but really, is it worth all of that horror of traveling there? And then, of course, traveling back here in time to get in front of the camera to you beautiful people. I mean, obviously, in the end, yes, it is. But really, it's a telling tale for the peace that seems to be so that's escaping us in our lives, that we desperately desire, we crave, we need peace. And yet everything around us, I use the airport only as an example of one thing in our life. We all have it all over the place. Taking away this peace. Where do we find peace? And I'll tell you, I struggle with it a lot. I wrestle with it a lot in my own mind because I'm seeking peace. As I age, I have a lot less patience. I have a lot less desire to do all of those things because I don't want that peace ripped away from me. I want to stay away from contentious situations because I don't want that peace ripped away from me. I don't want to do all of those risky things because I don't want to lose that peace. If I ever get blessed by God to have it, I want to hang on to it, baby, right? So, yeah, I don't know if you feel this way or have experienced it yourself, but how do we find that peace? And then how do we maintain it? Maybe the maintenance we'll talk about another day this week. But I think the element of finding that peace, it's so key, it's so important that we're going to spend time today. I want to read to you from the book of Psalms. And you know this psalm. It's beautiful. It's one of the most famous ones. Greg's going to throw it on the screen. Psalm 23 talks about the Lord as shepherd. We hear the following in verses 1 through 4a. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. And here's the verse that struck me. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul, leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Beautiful stuff. And you know this one, you've probably heard it, read it, all that good stuff. The key is this. He leads me beside still waters. And so in order to find and hang on so desperately to that peace, we first have to seek the source of peace, the one who leads us not by rough waves and rough waters, but still waters. That's God himself. And I'm going to talk to you just one little quick practical that I have started implementing in my life. I hope you do as well. And it's not a shocker, and it's something that I shouldn't even have to tell you, and that is prayer. However, I'm not a prayerful person. I've fought with prayer my whole life, but now I'm really dedicated and committed to it because it gives me some peace. It helps me through the discombobulation of life. Here's what I've been doing. I would encourage you to do the same, or even a better version if you already have one going. Keep it going. Every morning I wake up, usually in the fives, 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever. Usually I'm gone out of the bed before 6 a.m. And the first thing that I do is I brew my cup of coffee. And I do that not because it should come before prayer, but I know that if I'm praying, all I'm thinking about is that stupid cup of coffee. So I brew my coffee and I go sit on my patio with two things: my glasses and my Bible. And it's this one actually. These go with me and my cup of coffee. And I sit on my couch on the patio outside my house, and I quietly, in the dark sometimes, with no noise around, no hustle and bustle of city, no hustle and bustle of airports and TSA, I say my prayers. They're in here. So I say my prayers. And before I've done anything other than brew that cup of coffee, I've said my prayers and I've asked in some real sense, God, sprinkle me with peace, right? The next thing that I do, the very next 20 minutes that I spend, is with the scriptures and that cup of coffee, right? So I read scripture. I don't know what I pick. It's just sometimes I let the Bible flop open. Sometimes I keep going. I just finished Genesis again for the umpteenth time. Now I'm in Revelation. Like I went front to back, right? I'm reading scripture. And what all of that does in those first 40 minutes, the next 20 minutes I spend doing my exercise. So the first 60 minutes of my day I've kind of put into the power hour: prayer, scripture, and exercise. What those first 40 minutes do is reset and reframe the mind, because I know the discombobulation is out there, right? Like the airport return experience, the flight experience. So if I just hope that I'm going to get through that peacefully, I'm done. But if I start my day with peace, and it's like, when you film or take a photo, or you're filming something, you put a lens in front of the camera. You got to have a lens, right? I mean, it won't be able to see the world. That lens, for me, I'm trying very hard to saturate with prayer and scripture. And boy, when I do that, I can tell you, when I do that, it really sets the tone for the day in much better way. Today, I'm going to just confess it publicly on the interwebs, right? It's out there forever. I didn't do it. It was crack of dawn for me. It was a crack of dawn in New York, and that's 3 hours ahead of me, right? I didn't do none of that stuff. I was scraping myself out of the bed to get to the aeropuerto. And you know what? It was a rough airport run and flight, all that kind of stuff. I can say it because when I don't do it, it don't work. But when I do, it's not always perfect, right? The world and life, it's tough. But that reframe, that putting a new lens, that starting our day with peace, that still water that only God can provide, I stand a much better chance of getting out there and crushing the day in a Christ-like crucifixional manner. And look, it's not just me. There are countless men and women better than I, writers of the church, and other Christians who are alive today who can testify to the fact that starting their day with prayer and scripture sets the tone for everything way better. So I encourage you to not only take my word for it, but to take the word of better people than I. And when you do this, if you can implement this in your own life, like I'm telling you, it's a game changer. You become a different man, a different woman, ready to face the day as a warrior saint. It's time to get some, my beautiful warrior saints. All right, I've rambled enough. Perhaps I shouldn't fly and teach on the same day. But it made for a good intro and something that I think we all struggle with, that lack of peace. We don't want to lose it. How do we hang on to it? Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow. We love you. I love you. Hope you love us. We'll see you tomorrow. But until then, as always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.